Hello again. I'm back with another clock, and for me this is something completely different. One of my subscribers, who also collects clocks, repairs them, knew that I was looking for some models to repair that I hadn't seen before, and he sent me this one as a gift. It's a Penwood. The full name of it is a Penwood Numechron 24-hour GMT Tymeter. They've also been called cyclometers. They come as 12-hour clocks and 24-hour clocks. This one is a 24-hour. The way they work is there's a motor that turns one of 4 dials, or drums they're called: the seconds, the minutes, and the hours. And as the minute drum rotates every minute, it'll change the numbers here and work its way all the way across. To try to learn more about them, I pretty much did what you're doing now. I went on YouTube to see if I could find any of these clocks having been repaired, and there really weren't any that were that good, although it did give me a pretty good idea of what I'm going to see on the inside of it once I open it up. This particular one does not run. I've plugged it in to check. It's a Bakelite case, which is not in the worst condition. There's a bit of a scratch on top here, has a lot of dirt on it, but overall there's no chips on the corners. It's totally intact. Turning it over to the bottom, there's a date code, says 571. From what I'm seeing, this was made in May of 1971, and this particular model is the model 100. On the face here, there's a plastic shield over it. There's a bit of a crack in that, and the little metal frame around the digits is quite rusted. In looking at, again, at the bottom, I'm thinking that if I just undo 4 screws here, that's going to remove the entire mechanism from the case, and then probably these 2 screws will get the mechanism off of this particular plate. And that's what I'm going to look to do first. I also tried to do some research on the history of these and found that they were made starting as early as 1936. Early models had wood cases. Very often they were given as presentation clocks to employees, and I saw photos of some with plates on them saying, in honor of 15 years of service and that kind of thing. Also on the front plate here where it says GMT Tymeter, GMT refers to Greenwich Mean Time. I saw some examples of these for sale on eBay that are in very good condition, and I'm going to put a couple of photos here so that you see what one looks like when it's pretty much fully intact and looking good. Let me get set up here, and then I'll begin taking it apart. I'm going to begin by taking out these 4 screws. 3 are out. Let me do the last one. And let's see what happens here. Now that's definitely different looking. What I have to figure out next, I imagine, is, well, I'll remove the whole mechanism from this plate. So let's work on taking these 2 screws out next. One other thing of note that I read is that these numbers are actually painted on, and you have to be really careful cleaning them because it's easy to just rub them off, and you can actually purchase strips of numbers that match these that you can peel off and just replace them if they're worn away. Anyway, let's work on getting these 2 screws out. Okay, that's really quite rusty. Okay, let me take some time to take a closer look at this and figure out how I want to proceed on it. The first thing I want to do is remove the wire from this plate. I should be able to just push this grommet out of here. There we go. And I'll try to show exactly how this works. When these drums rotate, there are little metal clips that lock into these little grooves, and it keeps the drum from rotating more than just one number at a time. You can see there's one down over here. There's another one on the inside here for the middle one. And the third one is down here on the bottom. But what I want to do first is try to remove the motor and figure out why it's not working. There's a screw that holds, I believe, holds it in one over here and here. So let me get to work taking those two out first. And when I do get this free, I believe there's a spindle that's coming out of the motor that goes in the center of the seconds dial, and hopefully that'll slide out easily. But let me start with the screws first. You know, the whole thing seems to be coming with the seconds. Whoop. Okay, there you go. Where'd that other screw go? Let's find that before we lose it. There it is. Okay, what I want to do next, I'm going to plug this in and see what happens. A couple of things of note that I'm seeing here. On one side of the motor it reads Penwood Numechron, Pittsburgh, PA, made in USA. And on the other side, don't know if you can see it as clearly as I can, but it says November 24th, 1970. And I'm pretty certain that when this motor's working, this drum rotates. And right now it's tight, I can't budge it, I don't want to force it. So I'm pretty certain I have to figure out a way to get in here and loosen up the old oil that has to be all gunked up, and then try to re-lubricate it. So I need to do a bit more research if I can and try to figure out how to go about that. So I'll work on that, and once I have an idea of what I'm doing, we'll continue. I found a couple of videos that had some information that might prove helpful, and I'll show you. One of them had a motor quite similar to this, and this drum was able to be removed just by unscrewing it, as if the stem underneath is threaded. But this is not budging, I don't want to force it. So what I'm thinking of doing is if I put a few drops of liquid wrench in here, it might seep down, get into the threads that I assume are rusted, and that might help me to unloosen and get this off. A different video had again, a similar motor with a little piece of black, like electrical tape right here. And the person was describing how he's able to make a hole here and put some fresh oil in there to try to get the motor going. And quite a bit of rust was over here. I don't know if you can see it, but I started to scrape the rust away, and I used I have a nail set tool here with a very fine point on it. And when I placed it down in the center of this little indent, it went right through. And I now have a bit of a hole. I think the hole was already there. And I could access this to put in some, either usually the liquid wrench, again, to loosen up the old oil. I don't like having holes in motors on the sides like this because it's very difficult to drain it out, whatever I put in there. I much prefer to make a hole on the side of it somewhere so that you can just leave it on its side and it'll just drip out on its own. Anyway, let me at least start by putting a bit of the liquid wrench here and seeing if I'm able to remove this. Just applying a little bit. Where is it? And I'm going to let this sit a good 10-15 minutes. I want it to really give it a chance to seep in. Okay, it's been soaking for a while. Let's see if we get lucky on this. It's turning. I'm not sure if the whole stem is turning or if it's unscrewing, but we'll keep going. How about that? Definitely a nice thread there. Try to clean that up a little bit. Okay, the next thing is going to be, I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to get oil into this motor. I'm a little reluctant to use the hole that's here. If I can figure out a way to safely put a hole on the side here without damaging any of the gears inside, I would prefer that. So let me give it a closer look and see what I come up with. What I tried to do didn't exactly work out as I had planned. I thought I might be able to loosen up the stem here by applying a bit more of my liquid wrench to it, and then it looked as if it was gently beginning to turn as I used a little pair of pliers on it, except after a little bit of turning, it just snapped off. So now I'm faced with two options because this is now officially broken. Either find another Penwood to get a motor to insert into this unit, or just clean everything up, put it back together, and it'll be an interesting looking display item up on a shelf. So I'll see what I can come up with, but can't win them all, hey? Well, it looks like I got lucky. I was able to find another Penwood. This one is being sold as non-working for parts only, and I figured I would give it a try, especially because now I think I know how not to try to repair a motor that's not running. What I noticed right off the bat with this one is that the bakelite case is in much worse condition. You can see a big chunk of it missing from here. The little edges on the bottom are totally broken off. It's in much worse shape than my original one. But what I did notice is that, number one, the front dial here is in much better shape. It's much clean. There's no signs of rust on it. And when I turned it on to show the bottom, this plate looks almost like it's brand new. There's no evidence of any peeling of the paint or rust, especially as compared to the original one that I have. And you can see just how badly rusted out this one is compared to this. This one almost looks like it just came out of the showroom. And I really have no idea what kind of environment these two clocks were exposed to, because the date code on this one says 771 and this is 571. So they're 2 months difference in age, both from 1971. And I don't know what elements this was exposed to. I'm beginning to think that the motor, which was equally rusted out, may have been in a condition that it was totally unrestorable, regardless of my breaking off that little gear, the output gear. But I'll show you what really amazed me the most about this one. And that's when I went to plug it in. I discovered that it is in fact running. So The original owner believed it was in a non-working condition. Something happened to it somewhere. It is now functioning. So, lucky for me. My plan going forward now, take this out of this case and pretty much pick the best parts from here and substitute it into what I consider to be the better Bakelite case. So let me get set up and I'll start working on that. I'll do the same thing I did with the first clock. I'm going to undo these 4 screws. Same as the last one, I have 3 out. Take out the 4th. Flip it over. And it should lift right up. A bit of rust on the inside of this plate as well. That's kind of interesting. Let me undo these 2 screws next and we'll remove the whole mechanism from this plate. Whoop. Definitely much cleaner. I'm probably just going to keep this whole mechanism. I'll try to clean up the numbers here. Definitely a bit of dirt on this drum. It seems the white plastic is darker than on the other one, but I'll give it a shot to trying to clean that up first. And just to compare the two, here's the first one. So definitely, this is a bit cleaner, the numbers. So hopefully I won't disturb the lettering when I try to clean up the white portion of the drum. Anyway, something for me to work on. That'll take a bit of time, so I'll see how it goes and then we'll continue. By experimenting on the older one, I've discovered that water alone is enough to remove the painted numbers on these drums. So I had to very carefully work my way around these numbers, not touching the lettering, just using some warm water with just a little dab of Dawn dish detergent. But I think I got them looking pretty clean. So what I want to work on next is cleaning up the original Bakelite case, not the cracked one, but the better one. One thing I want to say is that compared with the other clocks that I have been repairing, merely replacing one motor assembly with another almost feels like I'm cheating. And as a result, what I'm going to try to do is restore it to get it as good looking a condition as I possibly can. One other thing I've done so far is the plastic cover on the front of it. This was off of the my original clock that I got. A lot of rust on it. This is a very thin piece of plastic, has a lot of scratches on it. Both of them did. And this is the kind of thing, the way it was made, if you remember, if you're old enough to remember the old Vacuform toy, which heated up a thin piece of plastic and then with the vacuum it sucked it down over various shapes. And I could tell by the crimping along the edges here, that's how these were manufactured. It was just heated up and sucked down over this shape. And this is the original one on the first clock. And this is what I've done to the second one. And I'll show you how I did that. First, I cleaned it off both inside and out with just some warm soapy water, but there were a lot of scratches on here. And what I used to get rid of those is a product called Novus 2. It's a paste. Place it on the plastic, rub it in with a cloth till it turns to a haze, and then just kind of buff it off. And you can do it more than once. I went over it twice, and it really gets the scratches out of here. It's looking quite smooth, and I think it's going to look very good over the numbers once it's completed. The next step is for me to work on the I'll show you what I've been doing with the Bakelite case. For quite a long time, I've been trying to clean up Bakelite clock cases with limited success. They just don't really get, they don't really come that clean. This is the old one. I've tried scrubbing it with soap and water. I've tried using Fantastic on it. One site that I was reading up on said to go over it with a metal polish, like a Noxon. I tried that. That really didn't work at all. It just comes up, it's a dull finish. What I ended up doing, because I happen to have an ultrasonic cleaner, and I experimented on the old one first, I placed this in the ultrasonic, got it nice and clean, then went over all the edges, all the surfaces with alcohol. And then finally, to really try to shine it, and that got it quite clean, I then said, let me give it a try, and with one thin coat of polyurethane, I tested it on this old one, and you can see the shine that it came up on it. And I even looked up, is it safe to use polyurethane on Bakelite? And it is. So I then did all of that between the ultrasonic cleaning, the alcohol, and finally my polyurethane. And I think it came out looking really good. So let me get back now to reassembling everything. The first thing that I want to do is place the plastic shield back into the case. And both of these cases had it held in with Scotch tape all around, which was all dried out, very brittle. I'm surprised that it even stayed put all those years. My plan is to place just a couple of small pieces of Gorilla Tape around the edges, and that's going to hold it really quite snug, probably for indefinitely. So let me work on that, and then we'll continue. I've attached it as I described with the tape. I'll show it to you. You can see the 4 pieces of tape in there, I believe. And that's quite secure. And what I'm going to do next is reattach this whole mechanism to this plate. If you recall, there was just the 2 screws here that held it on. Let me work on that, and then we'll continue. I've got the bottom plate on, and next, this little rubber grommet goes back in it. And now I'm ready to place the this back into the case. Okay, all I have to do now is secure it with the 4 screws here, and I believe we will be finished. So let me do that, then we'll continue. I've tightened up the screws, everything is secure, it's looking good. Let me set it up, plug it in, and we'll make sure that it's still working. It's set up, I have it plugged in, and let me turn it on. And it is running. There you have it, the Penwood Numechron GMT Tymeter. This was assembled in July of 1971. And let's see if all the numbers change as it's supposed to. Another 5 seconds, they'll be moving. And there it goes from 1259 to 1300 hours. This one is definitely more of a restoration than a repair. I hope you enjoyed the video. That pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.